phone. Listen to the thing. There's two phones. I did the whole thing. Bruchim Aboim B'Shem Egen Shir Torah. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's shir from Rabbi Yaakov Zev Shlita on Shabbos Hashchichas B'Isra Boneh B'Shabbos. We would like to have the great schus of sponsoring a shir. Call Egen Shir Torah at 718-851-8651. Rav Smith.
We had a shiloh where someone on Shabbos, his belt buckle fell off the belt, so now we had a strap, a piece of leather that was not functional. He wanted to know, could he attach the belt buckle to the belt on Shabbos? Another shiloh that I saw personally, someone did psicha. Obviously it was a very weak connection, and the whole perachas fell on top of him. And it was embarrassing, and no one knew what to do. So everybody kept on saying a long B'ch Shemei, and he's standing there like with the perachas on him. Should he put it back? You're allowed to put it back. Someone asked the question, he wanted to build, either on Shabbos or on Sukkot, he wanted to build something out of Coca-Cola crates. Maybe make a little house, maybe a sukkah. And as we'll see, this is also negated to the toys that are today. There are many different toys, whether it's Lego or the new type of toy. It's called magnet tiles. It's like tiles that stick together with a magnet. So now you have a connection, but it's not even interlocking like Legos. So Bekitza, an Erlich Yid is always busy. There's always new shilas and new metzias. But the common denominator is we always visualize Boneh like you're building something, with bricks and cement and glue or a hard hat or something of significance. Is it true sticking things one into the other is enough of an issa of Boneh? Also, certainly by Lego, the children play with, they don't do it to last. You play, you take it apart. So maybe building has to be permanent, like in a house or something of that permanence. Maybe just toys or magnet tiles that you play and take it apart. Maybe it's not Boneh. So listen to a real Metzia, because we solve both our problems b'chod ha'mechta. The Yishalmi is in Perik Zayin of Masechta Shabbos, Halacha Beis. It's also in the beginning of the 12th Perik. The Yishalmi asks the question, where did we find the original Boneh? In other words, we don't make Boneh because in the Mishkan it was Boneh. Ma binyan haya b'Mishkan. What was the binyan in the Mishkan? So the Yishalmi shayinoisnim krashim al gabi adonim. They would interlock, they would fit the beams into the sockets on the bottom. Do you hear what the original binyan was? No hard hat, no glue, no cement, no hammer and nail. Interlocking, putting one piece in the other. I'm afraid to compare the Mishkan to Lego, but it's a pretty good comparison. Both of them, you're not connecting it, you're fitting one in the other. But what's even more striking, the Mishkan, unlike the Beis Hamikdash, was not permanent. Api Hashem Yachnu, Api Hashem Yisou. So frag the Yishalmi, the same the Yishalmi, V'loi l'shah ha'isa. How could binyan be in the Mishkan? It was only temporary. Zok the Yishalmi, Shahayu chayim avanois v'alpi adibur k'may shehu la'olam. Since they did not know how long they're going to stay, it's like a binyan la'olam. As I state in the Yishalmi. L'maisa, the Yishalmi concludes, like one sheet al kapanim, Hada Amra, no, you don't have to come on to that. Binyan l'shah binyan. In other words, the whole question is a toyis. You don't have to have a binyan forever. Even a temporary binyan is awesome. So I don't know if you realize, but both of our shailis we found in the Yishalmi, which is the makar of binyan. Binyan l'shah is a binyan like in the Mishkan, and interlocking, lav dafki building is Mishkan. So a better definition l'chayr of building, Boneh, is creating, forming, assembling, but lav dafka, that you have to build something of significance. Rav Destel once said, if you steal a child's toy, plane, lamashal, is like stealing an adult's plane. For the child, that's his life. So I'm thinking Lego, the child builds something in his mind, this is mamish Kodesh HaKadoshim. So why don't we say Legos is asa based on the original Mishkan? I'll take it apart, but then again, that's binyan l'shah. And the emphasis, you look in the Gemara, especially the Afiyam you learned it not long ago, Masechta Shabbos, you'll see a number of examples of Boneh that will lav dafka building like we picture it, the conventional building. Shabbos kuv beis amid beis, you make a hole in the ground, enough space to hide something, even hide a money or hide a ring. That's Boneh. The Gemara in Shabbos also kuv beis, hametzadir eso even chayiv. If he puts stones in formation, he puts it in the right design, let's say landscaping, he wants to make a border to his lawn. So Rashi says, even though he didn't put tit, that's also Boneh. Putting down stones that's going to stay there is Boneh. The Gemara has, in fact, the Gemara spells out, there are certain structures that you stacked stones, and the Gemara says, Eloi, that the upper level, banacha ba'alma. The top level, I guess the way they built it, it was in a way that the top level stones, you didn't have to cement to the bottom levels. You just put the stones on and it stayed. I guess they did it in a way that it wouldn't fall off. But listen to the Lashon of the Gemara. Hanacha ba'alma, placing a stone is already Boneh. You zicha don't need nails and hammers and glue. The Gemara has a mashal of Boneh in Shabbos Sadekei, Migabein chayev mishum Boneh. We'll soon see how you do it, but you press together the curds of the cheese and you made cheese. Then you're not cementing, you're not knacking nails. But what's really significant, the Gemara Shabbos Daf Mem Zayin, Hamarza Mita Shel Tarsiyim B'Shabbos Chayev Chatos. Now this in halach is either referred to as Mita Shel Tarsiyim or Mita Shel Prakim, but it's all the same thing. Basically, someone was a craftsman, a salesman, and he would go traveling from city to city. I guess he couldn't afford to take a room in a hotel, so he had a bed that he would disassemble when he would travel, put all the pieces in his knapsack. When he got to a place that he wanted to sleep, he would take out the pieces and assemble the pieces. In other words, he's taking parts of the bed and putting it together. Zok di Gemara chayev chatos. Chayev chatos is a nice way of saying it's a malacha gemura. And this is quoted in Shulchan Aruch Shin Yud Gimel Sivav. Now we'll soon see that most Rishonim hold chayev chatos als Boneh. Okay, Rashi holds makeh b'patish, but whatever the case is, putting pieces together without gluing is malacha deraisa. Because the Mita Shel Prakim, they didn't glue it together. It fit in nicely, something like our Lego. So, Vuma Geita and Vuma Shtei, we see Lego. I'll give you another example. The Gemara says in Shabbos, also Daf Mem Zayin, a Kana Shel Sidon is also to construct on Shabbos. What's a Kana Shel Sidon? So Rashi explains, someone's a painter. So he has the regular sized paintbrush, but he wants to do to a high ceiling, and he can't climb up so high. So he takes another stick, attaches it to the first stick, and now he has a long paintbrush. That's a Kana Shel Sidon. He cements or paints. Zok the Gemara, that's also to make on Shabbos. You're not building from scratch, you're not cementing, you're attaching it, you're screwing it in. And we'll soon see the significance of this. And I'm sure there are other rayas, but it's very clear that building is lav dafka, the way we picture building, construction with a hot hat, with a nail and hammers. It's basically assembling something that's also awesome. Now I must mention that we kept on saying that Boneh is awesome and making a bed is awesome. If you notice, the original cases of Boneh were bekarka, or at least making a structure on the ground, building the Mishkan, digging in the ground. Rashi has a chiddush on that Gemara of Mem Zayin, Mita Shel Prakim, that if you assemble a bed, the person assembles a bed, he's taka chayiv chatos, but not als Boneh. Because Rashi's sheet is ein binyan ustira bekelim. Binyan is associated to karka, or at least connected to karka. So Rashi says, so what does it mean chayiv chatos? Als makeh b'patish. Okay, so Rashi's sheet is, you're still over. Just it's not Boneh, it's makeh b'patish. Tosfos takes exception, and Tosfos has a raya from Gemara later, and basically the Mechaber in the beginning of Shin Yud Daled goes with Tosfos, that yesh binyan usfira b'kelim if it's a keli gomer. So I feel comfortable to say that Boneh is lav dafka building in the conventional sense. It's assembling, it's constructing, it's putting together. Also, even according to Rashi, if something's attached to the ground, we'll soon see if you attach something to the kitchen sink, since the sink is mechubal karka, it's also Boneh. Also, the Ramah says in the beginning of Shin Yud Daled, a big keli that's memsa, that holds approximately 150 gallons, even according to Rashi, is considered Boneh because it's so big, it loses its shem keli. So B'kitzur, we're very comfortable to say that Boneh is much more applicable than we think it is. The Rambam, when he speaks about cheese, and this is Perek Zayin Halacha Vav, he says, "Amakabeit chelik al chelik." If you connect pieces, we'll soon see what it means by cheese. That's also Boneh. So here you see a striking resemblance from all this to Lego. You take pieces, you interlock it, you connect it. It's only temporary, but that's binyan l'shah. I'll give you a mashal of a Boneh b'keli, and this will date yourself, but today in the yeshiva no one knew what I was talking about, but basically they used to have a model plane, a model car. It was very good to keep children busy. There was many pieces, and you had to connect it, and after he finished, he felt like $1 million. And then he painted it, and he put on the stickers. The kids say, you make a model of a plane or a boat. So the Shmir Shabbos in Tezayin Chof says, that's mamish Boneh keli. Because that taka is, you're constructing a keli. But the truth is, Lego, even though you take it apart, l'chayr it's a binyan l'shah. So it still should be asa. You don't have to come on to a model to be over. And the emes is that the Paiskim taka say, and there are Sameach and Peri Good Alachid basis, even the Bavli holds binyan l'shah havi binyan. So now we have a problem. I saw the Shvisa Shabbos in Hagdama, in Dina Malacha She'ein Lekiyam, he quotes the Chasam Soif in Siman Ayin Beis, that binyan l'shah is not over. He goes with the Pashto Yishalmi. And he proves that it can't be, but one of the rayas is from the famous Noid Yehuda's Tshuva, that if someone uses it and makes an umbrella on Shabbos, he's chayiv chatas. An umbrella is only l'shah. So again, I can't say everybody agrees, but the Paiskim seem to agree, binyan l'shah is over. Now, if a person has a binyan l'shah that can't last, it's so flimsy, it's so temporary that it can't last b'chefza, that's not a binyan, because it can't last. I'll give you an example. Building blocks, what we used to play with, you put it was like pieces of wood, you put one on top of the other. If a child sneezed, the whole thing fell apart. That's not a binyan. Eichmer a binyan if it falls apart. So that would be not Boneh. But building blocks that interlock, Lego, or magnet tiles that mamish could last, that should be a problem. Now that we have a better definition of Boneh, is lav dafka building and construction, let's apply it to many different shaylas. So first of all, I want to try to explain why making cheese is Boneh. So without getting into the details, the cheese making process, you separate the whey, the liquid part of it, from the pieces that's called curds. It's a curdling process. So basically you have the whey, which is a liquid that's used in a different way, and now you have little pieces of cheese. So megabin is you take those pieces, those curds, put it into, either you do it by hand, or you can put it into a mold, and you press it together. Pressing it together is cheese making. That is Boneh, because that's medabek chalakim. You're connecting the pieces, the curds. And that's why the Rambam said that's, the Gemara says, but the Rambam explains it, ha-megabein is chayiv al Boneh. Let me give you a much more common mashal. It's the Geya for Shabbos, and especially for Yom Tiv. As you know, a number of years ago, there was a problem about the copepods, the insects in water, the little tiny bugs in water. And adayim, many people are makbid, they will not drink the water unless it is strained. So there are different methods of doing it. You could have a strainer that's in the bottom of the sink, before the water comes out. But there's a simple method. It's known as an easy filter. It's a very wonderful idea. You screw it onto the sink, and that sifts all the copepods, and you get water without bugs. For those that use it know that depending where you live, but if you live in a place that there is, the water is it's depending on the configuration of the piping, but there are some places that you have to change you have to clean out the filter every other day. Because there's so much impurities and copepods, and there's the charcoal that's used to clean the water. Bekitza, ask people that know that every other day the water does not come out. It's very slow. So you have to unscrew it, take a Q-tip, clean it, and put it back. The shaila is, on Shabbos, there's no problem of cleaning it, because you're not doing anything of no malacha. But unscrewing the easy filter and then screwing it back on, that should be a problem of Boneh. You're not nailing it in or gluing it in, but this is at least medabik halakim. But here, it's more serious of a problem, because here, since the sink is attached to the house, this is Boneh bekarka, even according to Rashi. And Re'ez Apel, the Chazon Ish, in the end of Siman Nun Gimel, speaks about what Yidden did for Doiris, I imagine, that they had a shmata on the sink, and Pesach, they try to sift out any impurities. So the Chazon Ish says, if you tie on the shmata tight, even if you don't make kesher, he's choishish for Boneh, because you're attaching something to the sink. No, a shmata is Boneh, kolshkein, a easy filter that you screw on so tightly that it doesn't even drip. And Taka Rabelski in the Shulchan Alevi, it's page Pei Aleph and Shin Memtes, although his opinion was that there was no problem with the water, you didn't need the easy filter, but he says, but those that use it, to screw it or unscrew it, is Isurim Chamurim Shel Binyan Ustira. And this is Pasha the Sugya. The fact is that you're attaching something on a permanent basis, even if you take it off 2 days later, but it's attached very strongly. It's a binyan on Shabbos of Kalim. Again, the Shevet HaKosi in Aleph Kuf Chaf Aleph says, even attaching a shmata, like the Chazon Ish, kolshkein, a easy filter. Now, consider the next question that's negated to all of us. Let's say you don't have an easy filter. You have a different type of, or you're not chayshish, whatever it is. But what happens is, Shabbos, you take the leftover soup and throw it into the sink, and what typically the soup goes down, and the lakshin, or the vegetables, or the bones remain in the strainer. The problem is, after a while, the sink strainer is clogged. So the water starts to rise in its level. So you don't have to be a big plumber to know, it's a very simple solution. You pick up the sink strainer, empty it into the garbage, and put it back. Now, there's no problem of muktzah with that. First of all, hopefully you don't touch the muktzah b'yadayim. And also, in our sink, some of it is still edible. A vegetable is basically edible. Lakshin is edible. So even if there's bones in it, but there's enough heta that we could say that you're not moving just muktzah, you're moving heta. So because you're allowed to pick up the strainer and empty it in the garbage. The problem is, when you put it back, l'chari the same ma'asav al binyan. It's the same sink, the same karka. Why isn't the sink strainer also just like a easy filter is us? So you'll say, no, I'm not screwing it on. I'm just putting it in. But that's the Gemara, hanacha ba'alma. Mitzadeh is asa, putting it down. But you think about it, there's a pashta chilik. This sink strainer is made to constantly take it out and put it back. Unlike an easy filter that's screwed on and becomes part of the sink, this is hanacha ba'alma that's not there to stay. The Gemara's hanacha ba'alma is you put the upper layer of a binyan. You didn't take it off the next day. You mavatal it there. Or landscaping stones, like we said, you put on the beginning of your lawn, you're putting the stones there to stay. Hanacha ba'alma that stays is a problem. This you put down and take up, and put down and take off. It's unreasonable. That's Boneh. The only reason why easy filters are, even though you take it off also after a day and two, is because when you put it back very securely. So there's taka chilik, and I saw the Orcha Shabbos in Perek Ches, Sif Lamed Bey says he has no problem with the removing the sink strainer, and I think I know why. It's different than a easy filter. Next question that Kedai to mention, it's in Yonah D'Yoyma. Many people have a water faucet in the back of their houses, basically like a piping water faucet, and that's where you have water that you could use either during the summer months or you could use it in your sukkah. The question is, if before Sukkot, before Shabbos, whatever it is, you forgot to attach the hose to the faucet, on Shabbos are you allowed to screw on the hose onto the faucet? So this is the same problem. You're screwing it on, and you're doing it in a way that it stays, and that's Taka problem. Taka the Shulchan HaLevi, same place, Taka in Siv Daled, Taka points out that this would be a problem of Moisav al binyan, a binyan of karka that's mamish a problem of Boneh. Someone had the shail of the pot handle fell off, but he had the screw. So he wanted to screw it back on Shabbos. So he thought there's no problem because the screwdriver is taka muktzah, but klisha malachta leissa, let's say al gufay mekaymay. So he was maniach haseika and taif is the tafel. The problem of muktzah is not a problem, but the problem of Boneh. This is mamish screwing on a handle to a pot that's mamish a tikkun. Makba patish or Boneh. Question, I hope it's not negeya, but when sukkahs comes later in the season, it could happen. Person had a wonderful sukkah, a wind came and blew off his bamboo mat, schach. Now he has a beautiful sukkah, but it's not kosher. So can you put the mat, the schach mat, back on top of the sukkah? So again, the person was worrying about muktzah, a different person, rather, but he's also always worried about muktzah, schach is muktzah, but he'll do it mikufay and he'll move it without touching it biyadayim. But this, he's missing the point. Putting schach onto a sukkah is real Boneh. It's oil, it's putting the roofing on the sukkah, and this already is karka, or attached to the ground. The fact that the sukkah is on the ground. And Taka, the Paiskim are clear about this, that to put schach on sukkah is a shayla of Boneh. Moshe in Chelik Dalet Siman Samach Desit Cotton Hay says, if a yid put schach on the sukkah, built the sukkah on Shabbos, you're not allowed to have enough in the sukkah. The point is that this is a serious problem of Boneh. It's hanocha ba'alma. That's the Gemara's lashon. That's an issa, not a heta. You don't have to glue the schach to be oiva. The fact that it's there is the problem. But now we come to an extremely important yesod. Many people have shlaks, different types, but basically it's very important because if it rains, you're going to get the whole sukkah wet. What's the heta to put shlak onto the schach on Shabbos or Yom Tiv? Why isn't that putting in oil? So the teretz that everybody knows is, if you put the shlak directly onto the schach, they're not making oil, because the oil is there already. So oil, agabi oil is not a problem. So you could put the shlak onto the schach on Shabbos Yom Tiv, no problem. The Paiskim say, but if the shlak is a tefach or more above the schach, so that's its own shem oil. So you're making a new oil on existing oil, that's not a problem. So that's why the best way to do it is make a shlak that goes onto the schach, you have no problem. But the metzias is, and if you know a little bit why, how it's made, you understand why, but if you have one of these pulley system shlaks that are pretty heavy, you don't want to put it directly onto the actual sukkah. It's not as good for the sukkah, so you basically put it a little higher above. So here you have a pulley system that works great. The shlak goes on, but it does not rest directly onto the schach. In fact, it's a tefach or more above the schach. So what's the heta to use a pulley system shlak that's a tefach or more above the schach? This is already making an oil. So this is a problem. But the Ramah in the end of Tov Reish Chavav, and it's more mefurish in the Darkei Moshe, so I'll read the Lashon of Darkei Moshe, this is not a problem. If the shlak is attached to the sukkah, or attached to the house, whatever the case is, but it's attached to something, you're allowed to open it and close it, even though it's a tefach above the sukkah. And listen to his lashon. Midi dehavi adeles shel bayis seveves al tzirim. It's no different than a door that opens and closes. You're allowed to do it on Shabbos and Yom Tiv. So the Ramah is saying it's a very interesting chiddush. A shlak, which is oil, is mutter like a door. What's the shaykh's door to a shlak? So to answer this question, I'll ask you a better question. Let's say someone has a leg of a table that fell off, but he's a shtickle handy and he could wedge it in that it will fix the table. On Shabbos, that's awesome, right? That's Boneh or Makabah Patish. So now let me ask you a question. Let's say suddenly you had a need, guests came unexpected, you run down to the basement and you take out, looks like a suitcase, but it's not a suitcase. It's a folding table, a real patent. The legs fold up, the table folds up, it has a handle. It looks like a suitcase, but it's a table. There's more work opening a folding table than securing a leg into a table. Here you have to make the table, you have to make the legs. So why is a folding table mutter if putting one leg is asa? Okay, here's another question. The Gemara says in Erevin Daf Kuf Aleph, Delas Almona, which means basically there's a open part on the wall. So you take a door that has it's not attached to anything, it's almona, like Rashi explains, it's not connected to something, and you stuff up the hole in the wall, and now you kept out the elements, you kept out the cold or the heat, whatever it is. So you took a stray door, and you put it into the wall, and that stuffs up the open area. Zog the Gemara, that's oiva. Why? Because you're making, it's ma'asav ala binyan. So let me ask you a question. Imagine you go to a place that the door is always kept open. Okay? A certain place, I mean, Shabbos, I don't know why they have doors on the front. Anyhow, it's always open and closing. Let's say you have a door that's never closed. It's open, it's held open with the door stopper, and for the past 10 years, it hasn't been used once. You decide you want a little quiet, you want to learn, so you pick up the door holder, and the door for the first time closes. Is that a problem? Because you're making a functional door that was not used for 10 years. The Pri Megadim says beferish, it's not a problem, even if it wasn't used in years. Question is, why is Delas Almona Asa, and this door that wasn't used in 10 years, why is it mutter? So the answer to all three questions is one simple yesod. If something is broken, it's shaykh the issa of Boneh. The leg fell out, it's a dysfunctional table. There's a hole in the wall, so it's broken. So you're putting in a table, you're putting in a Delas Almona, you're fixing it. But if something is not broken, like they say in America, if it ain't broke, you can't fix it. Or if it's not broken, you can't fix it. When you have a folding table and all the pieces are there, I wouldn't say it's broken and you're fixing it. I'm using it. Using is fine. Creating, constructing is asa. Using is fine. So the difference between a folding table is it's not broken, but a leg that fell off is broken. Or a delas that was not used in years, but it's on the hinges, is not broken. But if there's nothing in the wall and you put in a delas almana, it's over. That's the same yesod regarding the shlak. If you take a piece of wood, even if it's not muktzah, there's going to be a shlak, and you put it a tefach above the schach, you're putting a new oil on the oil. That's awesome. But if the shlak is attached to the sukkah or attached to the house, so it's the Dakimayish is masuk mitvash. Since it's attached, that's the way it's used. It's like a delas. Now you're wondering what's shlak shaykh is the delas? It's the same lumdis. If something that's attached is not broken, if it's not broken, you can't fix it. So putting a new piece of wood as a shlak is awesome. Using the existing connected shlak is not creating, it is using. Creating is asa, using is mutter. And that's the hezbah to a Gemara in Shabbos, Kuf Lamed Ches, where the Gemara says, basically, kisei traskel v'asla, which basically is like a folding chair or a folding item, you're allowed to open it on Shabbos. Rashi says, why? The loy midi of it, you're not doing anything. Rashi's lashon is avida v'koi. Now I know that Gemara is talking about the problem of oil. Shulchan Aruch Sintez Vav Hey quotes the Gabi oil. But the same lumdis we could use to any folding item. A folding item is not broken. It's avid v'koi. It's made. Lav midi avid. And folding item, I mean not just a table or a chair or a bed, but a playpen, a stroller. Today, it's the imagination of people to make things that fold up and you store away is wonderful. It's very convenient. So a fold-up stroller, you look at it, it doesn't resemble a stroller. but you're not creating it because it's not broken. If it's not broken, you can't fix it. So the Ramah's mashal is brilliant. A deles, even though you're stuffing up that area, is connected. It's not like a deles almana. So now we understand why a shlak on Shabbos or Yom Tov is mutter as long as it was connected from before. I hope the point is clear. Derech tashmishay, hishtamshus, is mutter because it was never broken. A mita shel prokim, like we said, even though you'll say, well, what's wrong? I'm just doing it temporarily. True, it's temporary. But lamais, it's broken. You took it apart. Disassemble and assemble is the malacha of Boneh or makeh b'patish. Question. I just saw this yesterday. Someone asked me this. They had a dessert cup, a fruit cup, whatever it is, a disposable dessert cup that came with two pieces. I should have brought one. I couldn't bring from Shabbos naturally. But basically, it's a cup that doesn't stand. You can't use it. So you wedge it into a base, and then you have a dessert cup. And it's disposable, so it's very convenient for a simcha. Can you construct that on Shabbos? So again, the one I saw, you could not use it as it is. And when you put it into the base, it actually stayed. If you wedged it in, it fit, it stood. That would be a kaishel prakim. What's the difference? Mitzvah prakim, kaishel prakim. Because that was never made. And when you put it together, you're making it. That's taka problem. That's taka the issa of we'll call it kaishel prakim. Now listen to the next question. It's the gay grada for Yom Tiv. Many people use oil when they light Neir Shabbos or Yom Tiv, but a regular Shabbos it's not negeya because if you use floating wicks, you make it before Shabbos. But when you have Yom Tiv, so whether you light on the first or second day, if you light on, of course, you light on Yom Tiv itself, the problem is, can you put the floating wick through the cork, the round cylinder, and that keeps the wick floating? So I saw in a Sefer Hilchas Mayadim, he said that's also a problem of Boneh. You're making a floating wick. And I would say, just like a disposable cup is only two pieces, but it's still asa, so why is a floating wick different? But the mice, it is different. Because the cup as it is not usable. So you're making a cup. The wick is the same wick before and after you put in the cork. The cork is just meant to hold up the wick, but you didn't make a wick. Taka de Shulchan Aruch and Tafkuf Yudal Tzif Ches says you're not allowed to cut a long piece of wick into two because you're making two wicks. There you're taka making a wick. But here the wick is made. You're not making the wick. You're giving a feature that it could float. You know what it's like? The old-fashioned, for those that use oil, they had like a metal holder that holds up the wick. So to put the wick into the metal holder, no one says you're making a wick. The wick is fine. It's holding up the wick. So here you're making a cup. Here you're just finding a way of using the existing wick. And Taka de Shever Alevi and Teskuf Chav Ches, the Chotashana, Yom Tov Aleph Beis, Shever Akasi, Dal Kuf Mem Dal, all say that the case of the wick is fine, the floating wick is mutter to make on Yom Tov. What could be a problem that sometimes goes unnoticed, when you get a floating wick and the hole was not yet punched out, or it was made, supposed to be punched out, but it's still there. Pushing out the center of it to be able to fit the wick through, that's taka makeh b'patish, or if you call it boneh, whatever it is, because that was not made, and you're actually making it. Knocking a nail into a wall is based on more on Shabbos Kuf Gimel. It's taka chayiv. That's moisav ala boneh, binyan. The kalkal Shabbos ois lamedal, so that's a question of boneh. Mr. Burr in Shin Yud Dal, if cut Yud Ches at the end, he calls it makeh b'patish, but whatever the case is, knocking a nail onto the wall, which stays there, is taka our sugya mamish. Now I'm going to ask you two questions, and I would like you to think. Today they have what's called a plastic hook. Now I don't have one in the house to bring it, but basically it's like a backwards S. Picture a backwards S, and one side hooks onto the door, and the other side comes up like an S, and you hang your hat or jacket. It's camp, it's very popular. You hang it onto the door, and you hang your coat or whatever jacket from that hook. Is that a problem, putting it onto the door? You're saying I'm not attaching it to the door? but there's hanacha ba'alma. But it doesn't seem that it's a problem. And the answer is pashut, because it doesn't stay there. It moves around. You take it off sometimes. But it doesn't, it's not like it's hanacha ba'alma is when you put it down by hanacha ba'alma, but it stays there. Like in the case of the landscaping or the building. And I did see the Archa Shabbos and Ches Chaf Aleph. He's taka mekel, and I think the svara is it doesn't stay there. It moves, it shifts. Oh, that's one question. Next question. Many people have what's called a suction hook. Basically, you want to have a hook to hang something. So you take a suction cup, they sell it, and you suction it properly, and really, theoretically, it could stay for a long time. So this, the Shmir Shabbos, Chav Gimel Mem Daled, and the Orlatzia and Chav Zayin Daled, and Taka the Orcha Shabbos and Ches Yud Beis, that's Taka Moisef Ala Binyan. Because the suction cup is a connection. You'll say I didn't use glue or nails, but that we said is not relevant. The fact that it stays, it's a connection. You're putting something functional onto your house, that's Moisef Ala Binyan. And that seems to be Muskim. The Chut HaShani, we'll soon see an Amud Reish Nun, the Shtikal HaMekel, but the Paiskim that I saw are all Machmer, that's considered a Moisef Ala Binyan. But the next question, I think, is not as pashut. Today they have magnet, they use magnets in many ways. One of the ways is you want to hang something on the refrigerator, you hang it with a magnet. Today someone told me they even sell lettering that has a magnetic backing to it. You could write a message on the refrigerator, I went to shul, I'll be home this time, I'll be at that time, but putting letters one on the other, one after the other. It's a magnetic backing, and you can put it onto any place that holds up the magnet. The question is that also being Moisef Ala Binyan? If it would be a din, dafka knocking nails or gluing, so then there's no shaila. But since we just said a suction cup is a problem, so why is a magnet different? And Taka the Shmir Shabbos and Chav Gimel Mem Vav says using a magnet to attach something or attach something with a magnet is a problem. You have a bench holder with a magnet. And the Chayr the Svara is once you it's lav dafka glue or nails, so if it stays, it stays. So what's different, suction or magnet? The Archas Shabbos and Ches Yud Gimel is more makel with a magnet. He's mach with a suction cup, but a magnet he's makel. The Chutshani, as I mentioned, Chelik Beis, Amud Reish Nun, is also makel. But I think the main svar to be makel is because the magnet doesn't last as long. Simply, you put one bench, okay, 3 benches, the whole thing falls down. Someone brushes into it. So it could be a pashut and mitzvah that a suction cup has the ability, it's considered a chibur. The magnet is not. But someone told me these lettering that you put onto the refrigerator, it taka stays. It's lightweight. So if it's taka a real connection, you have to be chosh that this would be no different than any other connection to a binyan, that l'chayr is a problem of Moisef Ala Binyan. A belt buckle that fell off, so basically it's totally dysfunctional. You can't use a belt without a buckle, and you put a piece of leather. So the emphasis is if when you reattach it, it works, so you fixed it, and a chanabi. Whenever you eat something, it pops off, expands a little bit, and you put it on and you eat something, it falls off again. So if it's not fixed, you can't fix it, So if it's not fixed, there's no issa fixing. But if when you put it on, it stays, Taka I saw the Archas Shabbos, it's page Reish, page Vav. He says if it stays after you put it on, that should be a problem of either Boneh or Makabah Patish. Adding a leaf, now today they call it an extension to a table, basically you pull out the sides of the table, you put the leaf in, and you push it together. So even if there are little pegs that go into a hole, but the place can seem to be makel, that's not moisef. The table is made. You're adding an oil, but this is only moisef ala oil. The Shmir Shabbos, Chav Dalet, Chav Hey, and also this is the Marsham and the Tshuva, in Vav Mem Gimel, and the Ashrei Ho'ish, that's about Yashav, Amud Reish, Chav Ches, are all makel. Apparently you're not really constructing something. The table is there. You're adding an extension, but you're not making a table. It's not broken. And if it's not broken, you can't fix it. A mezuzah that fell off the doorpost is a problem on Shabbos. You're in a house or a door without a mezuzah. So even if you somehow could put the mezuzah back in the same existing nails, let's say it fell off, but the nails are there, and you could stick the mezuzah hole, the cover hole, through the nails, and you get it back onto the door without knocking in nails, but that's definitely a problem of Moisev al Binyan. This is a house, this is karka, and you're attaching successfully the mezuzah to the nails. You didn't knock the nails in, who cares? This is hanacha ba'alma that lasts. And that I taka saw the Archas Shabbos and others say that that's taka Moisev al Binyan. The only question is if the mezuzah case is on the doorpost. Sometimes the mezuzah itself falls out. So you want to slip the mezuzah into the connected mezuzah holder. So that the stay chemed and Mareches Mem Ois Siman Kuf Tezvav discusses if there's a problem of tikkun habayis, because the door without a mezuzah is something wrong to do with the room. So maybe you're being masak in the bayis. Now he doesn't seem to be concerned about Moisev al Binyan. You're putting the mezuzah back into the case and it's going to stay there. So I saw the Shmir Shabbos in Chav Gimel Ha'ara Kuf Yud Zayin wonders, why is there a problem? Moisev al Binyan. And you're not attaching the case is already attached, but you're sticking the mezuzah in. And the mezuzah is now being Moisev al Binyan. So once you hold, you don't have to have a connection of nails or glue. So putting in the mezuzah, as long as it stays, the same Moisev al Binyan. And the Chari is right. It's a new type of hanacha ba'alma that stays. So if you can't attach the mezuzah, attaching the mezuzah into the case should be the same problem. I had the shaila once someone hurt his foot on Shabbos, and he was a very tall fellow. What does that have to do with the Shabbos? Because in the infirmary they had crutches from a boy that just finished using them, a very short fellow. The difference was about 2 feet. The tall fellow needed crutches, but the other crutches, the way they were now, were made for a short fellow. So you take out the screws, and you could lengthen the crutches, and now you have a longer crutch for the tall fellow. This sounds similar to our Gemara of Kana Shel Saiden. There you extended the paintbrush, here you're extending the crutches. You're not you're not nailing it together, but this is a very strong connection. Obviously, if a person can lean his weight on the crutches and it doesn't crack, obviously if you're unscrewing it, stretching it, and putting back the screw, I saw Rabbi Yaakov Fisher in Ma'or HaShabbos, Chelik Dalet, it's Amud Tov Kuf Mem. He says, since it's made to stay, this person could use it until he has a refuah, that would be like a tekiah, and it stays well, that would be constructing a new crutch. The other one's not good for this person, it's much shorter. So it's very similar to the Kana Shel Saiden, that's a problem. The proiches that fell, reattaching it, if you put it back on a place that it stays, so that's Taka Moisev al Binyan. And Re'ez Apella, the Magen Avram in Shin Tezvav Siv Beis speaks about a proiches, attaching a proiches. Magen Avram says, but there's no problem of oil because the Arna Kodesh is the oil. So putting a proich is no problem of oil. Shin Tezvav is hilchas oil. Freg de Chazenish in Nun Beis Yud Gimel, I don't understand. I know there's no problem of oil. Why is there no problem of Moisev al Binyan? You're attaching a proiches on an Arna Kodesh to stay. And the Chazanish spells out, attaching something to a bias that's there to stay is Moisev al Binyan. So according to the Chazanish, it would be a problem of adding a paroiches if it will stay indefinitely. But, here's the big but. If something's wrong with the paroiches attachment that it fell off in the first place, so you put it back, it might fall off again. So if it's not fixed, you can't fix it. But if indeed you put back the paroiches in a way that it stays, like the Chazanish, that should be a problem of Moisev al Binyan and should not be done on Shabbos. Opening a stroller is no problem because that's one piece. Attaching a seat to a carriage they have today, you could take a seat, another child can sit in it, and you screw it in. That's being Moisef to a keli, and you're tightening it in a way that taka you're giving it permanence. Now, someone asks, so why could I close the high chair? I attach the tray to the high chair. The Torah says that that's not made to stay. You're not locking your child up forever. You're putting him in so he eats, takes it off. That's not an attachment. But this is certainly an attachment that you're keeping it to use as long as you want to use it, and that's not a problem. And the last group of questions is based on a delightful sugya that we have in our sugya. The Magen Avram in Shin Yud Gimel Sif Kat Yud Beis says, Mita shel prakim is asa, hu adin koi shel prakim. Which means you have a cup that obviously with two pieces, and you screw them together. So now you have a cup. That's the issa of Boneh or makibah patish. Like Mita shel prakim is Boneh makibah patish. Then he adds, but if you attach the pot cover to the pot, even though you use a shroif, even though you use a screw, it's mutter on Shabbos. I used to have a popular pressure cooker. You attach the pot cover to the pot. But whatever the case is, the Magen Avraham says using a screw to make a kais is awesome, but attaching the pot cover to the pot is mutter. And his source is, since you have to open it to take out the food, just like it's not a kesher shel kayama, it's not a binyan. And he compares to a Trumas Hadeshin and Siman Samachei. They used to cement the oven closed with a plank of wood. You're allowed to break it open on Shabbos because it was not done to stay for Shabbos because you have to get the cholent out on Shabbos. So the question is, wait a second. Koi shel prakim is asa. And K'deir shel prakim is mutter. It's the same shroif. It's the same problem. So the Rav in Siv Chaf Aleph explains, there's a fundamental chilik. You make a cup, you could use it, and you do use it indefinitely. But this K'deir that you screw on the pot cover, you're not doing it so you won't eat cholent on Shabbos, you're doing it for a while. But when it comes time to have cholent, you're opening it. If you open it b'Shabbos atzmai, there's no problem. Azoi tainit the Magen Avraham. However, the Chazon Ish in Siman Nun, Sif Katan Tes, says a Go'inish Shavart. And he says, if you take two parts of a cup and screw it together, you're making a cup that was never here. Here, you're not making a keli. Hakeret, you're ruining the cholent. When you put the pot cover on, you're ruining the cholent. You can't get to it. The teretz is you're not putting it on to make it a keli. You're putting it on to cover it. So, mikara pot, v'hashta pot. You put on the cover to keep it insulated, whatever the reason is. But ain't stimas hakeli binyan elashimush. The klisasam lo'olam ain't a keli. If you close the cholent pot and make it ois cholent pot, then how are you going to get the cholent out? The teretz is you never made a keli, you had a keli. Reb Shlomo Zalman in the Shmir Shabbos adds a knech that the pot is not broken and the cover is not broken. You're using a pot cover with a pot. You're not making a new keli, but two halves of a cup is nishkein cup. So you're making a cup. So whatever the case is, the cup, you're making a cup. The pot, you're using it. Like I told you earlier, constructing, assembling, making is asa. Repairing is asa. Using is mutter. It's very similar to the derech hishtamshus that it's not a problem. The Mincha Shloim in Siman Yud Aleph Sif Katan Yud Beis asks a question. Loit the Chazon Ish, how is it mutter to open a salt shaker, put in salt, and screw it on? There, it's not like a pot cover. There, it's not a keli without the cover. So maybe you can't screw on a salt shaker on Shabbos. Which like Zechisi Lahav, and I saw the Orcha Shabbos quotes Rabbi Yashiv and Rabbi Zalman, in fact, and this in Karelitz, that the same thing. You can't screw on a salt shaker and say, I made the keli, because you ruined the keli. Because once the salt runs out, you're going to have to open it again. So a salt shaker is not broken when you put before the cover. It's not fixed afterwards. It's using the keli. So lamaisa, you're allowed to open a salt shaker and close it on Shabbos. But what is monegeya is a very common question, obviously. And that is today they make stenders that are adjustable. In other words, the old-fashioned stenders, the wooden ones, are good and wonderful. There are those that are adjustable. It's basically two pieces of metal that one goes into the other, two like supports, so to speak. And if you want it higher, you stretch it and you put the screw in, and then it's higher. You want to make it shorter, you take out the screw, let it fall to your desired height, and you put the screw in. So the shaila is adjusting a stender on Shabbos is that a problem? So this sounds similar to a Gemara that we learned. Which one? Kana shel Saidin, the paintbrush. It sounds similar to the crutches, which we said is a problem. And indeed, the Minchas Yitzchak in Tesla Matches feels that adjusting a stand on Shabbos is a problem. He says, Lamaisa, you do it sometimes for your height, you keep it and you use it over and over. And his lashon is, it's hard to be makel on something that's really, you're tightening it securely to keep it and use it. That's his maskana. Rabbi Yashiv and Ashriya Ish, Yud Ches Chav Gimel, was mamash choishish. It's like a mita shel tarsiyim. Because when you lift it up, you can't use it as it is. So you have to tighten it. That's not a problem like mita shel prakim. However, most poskim are mekel for the very simple reason that it was never lost its shem stender. A stender at any height is a stender. It's too tall for this fellow. Okay, so just get a different person. But at no point will we say the stender is broken. A mita shel prakim, when it was disassembled, is broken. If it's broken, it's shaykh tikkun. Tainid, the many poskim, that if it's not broken, it can't be fixed. Rav Vosman Chelik Vav Lamed Beis, he says, it's not like you're taking two pieces and you're screwing it together. The two pieces are one. You're just shifting it and just reattaching it. But he says it's like a door attached to hinges. He's using our mashal of deles that was never broken. I don't think he means it like a deles mamish, but it was never broken. If it's not broken, you can't fix it. Reb Shlomo Zalman or Shabbos Chelik Beis Tafresh Zayin says, even if I make it for my height, this is typical of Shlomo Zalman, but if a child wants to use it, I'll make it for his height, but Shuas Chaim. So I never really made it for my height to be permanent, because if someone needs it, I'll give it to him. The point is, either it doesn't have permanence, which we said the Rav is mekel, or it's not broken. Now the Or L'Tzion and Chav Zayin Gimel, as a shtickle chiddush, which is true in the Metzias, it depends where the stend is used. A stend in a shul, when you make it to your height, it might be changed by the next person that uses it. But your stender in your house that you make to your comfort, that maybe is a problem to adjust it because it was made to stay. But whatever the case is, I think it's clear that most poskim are mekel, and basically, since it's functional in any way it is, either way it is, it's okay. I should mention, if the person overdid it and pulled out one piece from the other, now it's two pieces, so now it's broken. Taka putting it back is a problem. Also, when you learn our sugya in Shulchan Aruch, you'll look at the Magen Avram, see if Katan Yud Gimel. He said beferish, Koishel Prakim is awesome. Hu adin ashtenda shebeis hakneses. So how can you be makel connected to Magen Avram? But you look in the Levushei Sra, see if Katan Chavav. He says because the shtenders that Magen Avram is referring to was made leprakim. It was made pieces. You disassembled it and you put it back. No, mita shel prakim is chayiv chatas. So shtenders shel prakim is chayiv chatas. But our standard that are basically one piece never was broken. If it's not broken, you can't fix it. And Achrein Chaviv, the question of Legos and various toys and Coca-Cola crates. So the emes you have to realize there's a lot at stake. Because if we come out with the maskana that Legos is Boneh, then not only you can't play with it, okay, so you won't play with it, but you can't give it to your baby to play with, your baby child or grandchild. Because if it's asa to do, then an adult can't give a child safina be a dime, even a cotton ben yaimai. And then it's certainly muktzah. But if that's the halacha, that's the halacha. So let's think objectively, which means not what we do, but let's think what should be done. Pashtis, Lego is similar to the Mishkan. Havdil, but it's the same idea. You're being medabek chalakim. It's not glue, it's not nails, it's not anything but interlocking. Vivait in the Mishkan, that's the Malacha, so why is Legos any better? Legos you take apart, but Vait the Mishkan, Hadad the Amra, that binyan l'shah, havi binyan. And that's why the Shmir Shabbos in Tezayin, Yutes, Rav Moshe and Chelikei, Chav Beis, Chav Zayin, and I saw Rabbi Yashiv and Ashriyish, Chelik Beis, Omid Reish Lamed Aleph, felt that tackle Legos is a problem of Boneh. Binyan B'Kelim. Either it's Boneh, Makir B'Patish, but it's no different than the original Mishkan. Now, let me add a little of a hezbah. Enochanami, the building blocks that we grew up with, that there's no connection. That's the Hanocha Ba'alma that does not last. So that's fine. But this lasts, and the Mitzvah is that these things last. And according to this, of course, Coca-Cola crates has even more of a connection, and the magnet tile that also stays are all a problem. But, and here's the big but, there is certainly a makom lahakal, which indeed the minig ha'olam is to be makel, and I'll tell you why. If you open within a day, we saw a Rav Shulchan Aruch learning about Magen Avram. Opening within a day is takamutta. We saw a Trumas Hadeshen, that you cement a covering onto the oven, and the Trumas Hadeshen says, and there are more quotes in Reish and Tes, you're allowed to break off that connection because it was made to take off on Shabbos. So a regular aroi is taka asa, it's kept a few days, and the Mishkan it wasn't. They didn't move there a few hours later. But if you know the child will make it and take it apart with the on Shabbos, then you have a Rav to be Saimachan. But there's a more fundamental yisoid that brings us to our sugya from a beautiful, very beautiful perspective. In order to be us, it has to be boina. Every case of boina, you build something to have something. You wanted to go to sleep at night. You're a merchant, so you took the pieces of the bed and you made a bed. You're taking it apart a few days later. Who cares? You made a bed. The tachlis, the aim is to make a bed. A person builds a bed on Shabbos. He's chayiv chatas. You build crutches, whatever. You build something. There's a goal to build. Lego. Pardon me, the goal is to keep the kids busy. They're not building a mansion, they're building and taking it apart. The tachlis is not to build it and use it like a model. The tachlis is to build it and take it apart. Who says that's binyan? A game is not binyan. Binyan l'shahabi binyan because you have a tachlis. I want to make crutches, I want to make a stender, like some. But this is just take it and make it and take it apart. This is different than a model, than anything we saw till now, that there's no tachlis of binyan, the Shem binyan. The bottom line is, if it's not fixed, you can't fix it. If it's not built, you can't build it. So toys are totally mufka from the issa of boina. The Ber Moshe in Vav Chavdal and the Chavadas and Chav and Beis Nun Hey both point to our Magen Avram about the pot that you're allowed to screw up clothes with the cover. How do we explain that? That if that's derech hishtamshus, it's not boina. The pot, you're not making a new pot, you're using it. The toys is the greatest derech hishtamshus to build and take apart. And that's why the minig ha'olam, I think, is to allow young children to play with the Legos. Because there's enough stuff to say that really it's mutter. But since we saw the Shmir Shabbos or Moshe Feinstein held it's a problem, so a child Hagil Lechenech should not be allowed to play with this Lego. But Rav Moshe himself, who held Taket's Asa, he says Lamaisa it's not muktzah, because since children do play with it, so in the house it's a household toy, and they're allowed to Hagil Lechenech. So if you ask me, can I give my child to play with Lego? Rav Moshe would hold no. The other paiskim, the Betzina Rav, and those paiskim that are Mekel B'chlal say why not? But I think the fair maskana would be to give it to a child, probably is also mutter, but it's zichana muktzah, and the child could play with it. But one thing I will say, what this person asked me, to take Coca-Cola crates and start building something, that's a problem with the holidays. Because that's, first of all, he's doing it, he's building a sukkah, he's doing something to last. And this is secure. And this is not only for children. I mean, adults also use these things to make whatever they want. So that would be more like a binyan, like the Mishkan. It would be a problem. I couldn't talk to you all.
Shem Igenshet, I would like to thank Rabbi Smith for the wonderful share. Rabbi Yisrael, I would like to ask people to daven for Klal Yisrael, a lot of Chol Yisrael, they need Yeshuas, and not like people are advertising, there's no cases, there's no corona. My Shve and my Shviga, they went 2 weeks ago to Hamish Hotel in the mountains for Shabbos, and they're both now in the hospital intensive care unit, Rahman and son. And Moshe Shain, my Rav Flavash, was dragged this week to the hospital too. And many people in yeshivas, parents tested positive. I know facts from people, names and people. There are a lot of cases out there. The LTE should give sich achting, and people should be careful not to go to people that come from different states, different cities. And I want to ask everybody to have them in mind in the tefillas. That I'll say the name to have them in mind. The Shavafu Shalema, Avraham Gutkind Ben Chaya, and Vizagosoi Cyril Bas Esther für Shalem Bebesuch Shacholi Yisrael V'Noimar Amen. Also, English is giving out a journal to Mechazik, the yearly journal for English Worldwide Project. We're asking everybody, please, now for the Heilige Tag, take out in the journal sponsorship as chus of Zikur Rabben for the whole upcoming year, for last year. Darf the Chazir for chus im Zitas, im Spoche zu ben Azmanim, teure ist ohne Gewul. Chus a teure ist die größte Chus, das kann sein. Und das Chus im Chazir in English Teure, wir gehofft, und der Ksivach sie mit Teure, ein gut gebenchte Jahr. Ab kham kash man gut bagazak so fikri ben temet shana madan khofs man tsitka ya gdol ter vi adir mei ich mein auch am mai ist